welcome to today's episode of the Balanced Approach podcast. I'm your host, Louis Padian. I hope that you're doing well and are enjoying the podcast and the topics we've covered so far. These podcasts are released every Monday, Wednesday and Friday, so be sure to subscribe wherever you are listening to be kept up to date. So today we are going to touch on a really important and often, it's common topic that I discuss with patients, and I feel can help people get a lot further with a lot less effort, and that's around honesty. And this isn't just about being honest with other people, this is about being honest with yourself and what we'd call self-honesty, and it allows us to identify better our strengths, weaknesses, motivations, and that sort of leads the way to meaningful and sustainable changes that we're probably all looking for. But before we get into that, how we're going to do that, let's sort of have a look further into why we might do it. So it allows us to develop that self-awareness, and we probably know people day to day that you might observe do things and you feel that they're potentially not very self-aware. It might be the person who talks about how they're potentially not losing weight and they're trying everything they can, but when you observe it as an outsider, you see that they're mindlessly snacking throughout the day. They're not moving as much as they think they are. And having that level of self-awareness allows us to actually make these positive, healthy changes long term. So a 2020 study showed the links between self-awareness and positive health outcomes, which is probably isn't huge news to a lot of people, because if you are wanting to improve your health, there's an element of self-awareness that is really important. And they found that understanding our thoughts, feelings, behaviors and actions, by doing that, we're better equipped to make informed decisions that align with our long-term goals. And what does that mean? So being more aware of certain thought processes that go in your head. So it might be that all or nothing thinking that you commonly just slips up into your thoughts, and actually being able to challenge that. It might be being aware of feelings that you're always being quite hard on yourself, you're always feeling down, and therefore your only coping mechanism to manage that might be leaning into food. Or if you're not feeling like you want to go to the gym, go for that walk, then you don't do it. Being aware of the sort of patterns that happen there, and just our overall daily habits and behaviors as well, being aware of that actually allows us to make small adjustments. And that's often what I work on with a lot of people, is raising that awareness and allow us to make small sort of minor changes that don't feel like overwhelming, and therefore sort of turning that ship so that it aligns with our long-term goals. And what the research suggests is that this translates into improved health behaviors, so probably better sleeping patterns, better eating habits, better activity behaviors, increased motivation, which we know is going to be useful from time to time, but also allows us to build that momentum over a longer period of time, and overall greater well-being. So it's hugely important to develop that self-awareness. So when we talk about honesty as well, that a big part of that is around self-reflection. And one of the biggest things that I do with my patients and clients is sort of prompts or ask them questions that's going to allow them to reflect. And this was actually looked into in a 2018 study that found self-reflection and honesty were crucial factors in successful habit formation. And we know from previous episodes, if you listen to them, habits are all the things that we do on autopilot, day to day, things that you might not even be aware of, or things that you've had to work on, either breaking or starting, and are pretty much make up the vast majority of things that we do each day. And they found this study that when we honestly assess our current habits and identify areas of improvement, we can develop effective strategies for lasting change, which is pretty much what I do a lot with my clients for coaching. So we assess their overall lifestyle, what they're doing day to day. We potentially have a look at areas that might be worth improving on, depending on what their goals are and what they want to work on. And we might sort of pick the habit or behavior that's going to give us the biggest return on investment, or what we might call low-hanging fruit. So potentially one small change in their diet could have a huge impact for not much effort, and that's the sort of things that we'll be working, and that can help us develop effective strategies for lasting change. So if you think of it like a house, this honesty, this self-reflection element allows you to lay solid foundations or solid structure for healthy habits to be built upon. Without that self-awareness, without that self-reflection, without that honesty, we're building on shoddy, unstable foundations, which means those habits and behaviors probably aren't going to be able to last very long, but also are quite unstable. So slight change of wind, something crops up, become a bit stressed, then it all falls down, and that's not what we want.
We also think about, when we look at honesty, it's about navigating challenges. And this is one of the things that we wanted to work on around honesty, where it's not just about being harsh with yourself, it's about being compassionate. We're not there to beat ourselves up, we're there to be our best friend. We're there to have that element of wanting the best for ourselves and that element of being kind, which pairs up nice with that self-honesty. And we can't be self-compassionate if we're not being honest with ourselves. And a 2019 study also looked at this as well. So by acknowledging our limitations and setbacks honestly, and that's where we have to be quite frank about things. And often when I speak to patients, it's about, I'm not here to judge, I'm here to help. So all the things that I'm saying, they're coming from a place of love, care, compassion, and I'm not here to beat you up, I'm not here to judge you, I'm here to help as best I can. And that's what people have to do with their self-reflections as well. They're not there to beat themselves up with a stick, but sit there and be quite frank and honest with themselves. And that's why we might say, don't criticize yourself. Let's have a look at productive ways that we can move forward. And this sort of fosters resilience and empowers us to bounce back from these challenges, these setbacks. So we might say that we might not hit our steps for this week. We might not hit our fruit and veg goals for this week. What are the reasons why we might not have done that? We're not there to go, right, we're not going to say it's because you're lazy, because you didn't try hard enough. Actually, we're probably trying quite hard. Most of us are doing the best that we can in the situation that we're in with the tools that we have available. So maybe we have to have a look at the situation that we're in and the tools that we have available as well, or the knowledge that we have. And that's how we can put a plan together to try again next time, see if we get a better result. If we don't, then we've learned that potentially there's a few different ways that we might not get the best bang for our buck from, but trying different ways to try and make that progress bit by bit and learning how the process folds out by the things that we can controlling the controllables. And importantly, remembering that self-honesty isn't about berating ourselves, beating ourselves up. That's not going to be productive long term. And there's a really good quote that I stole years ago, and it was from, you can't pick yourself up if you're busy beating yourself down. And realistically, the world's hard enough as it is. The last thing you need is you beating yourself up about the things that you're trying your best at. It's about creating a space for growth, self-acceptance, but also self-improvement along that as well. Wanting the best for you, wanting to look after future you, wanting to be kind and compassionate to past you as well, and working on that compassionate element running through everything we're trying to do, where we're not trying to beat ourselves up, but be positive. So that's all the reasons why we sort of focus on that honesty element. I think it's hugely important when I've had people sit down opposite me and they're telling me things, their stories might not match up. They might be exaggerating certain things. They might have not been quite honest with themselves. I can hear it, but that if that honesty isn't there, it's really, really hard to make these powerful changes long term, or sustainable changes long term. And if that honesty is there, we can definitely make improvements. And that's how important I think it is. I think it could be the difference between people not making any changes at all, even regressing, going further back. People, even no matter what situation they're in, if they're able to be honest with themselves and work and use all these different tools we're going to talk about in a second, they can make phenomenal improvements long term. So how to cultivate self-honesty, or being honest with yourself. A big part of that would be mindfulness, and that's why I work on a lot with my clients around being in the present moment, responding thoughtfully rather than reactive impulsively, and being aware of your thoughts, feelings, actions and behaviours without judgment, without beating yourselves up, without judging yourself, calling yourself silly, stupid or anything like that, and just going, oh, that's curious, that's interesting, and developing that childlike curiosity that we might say, where children rarely ever think stuff good or bad. They often look to adults for the assurance or to understand where to categorize it, but they'll have this curiosity where they don't see it as good or bad. They'll just go, oh, that's interesting, and want to have a look a bit deeper. So without that judgment, you can become more aware of the patterns of triggers that are potentially leading you down different or paths that you don't want to go down, but also what options are available to you as well, at what point you are in control, what things can you control along these processes, along these patterns, to have better outcomes long term. Next up is a common tool that I think is really useful and often misjudged, and actually funny enough, the next episode this week is all about journaling, and journaling is one of the best tools that I think for people, even if it's just something that people do on the odd chance. It doesn't have to be a big thing, and we'll obviously discuss a lot more about it on the next episode. but it offers this point of reflection that often people can use on to reflect on the day and also set plans for the next day. But I also know clients who use it to set their intentions for the day as well, and allows them to set their habits and behaviors in line with what they want to achieve. And just having that moment of being present, ignoring the noise around them, and be brilliant in handling challenges, dealing with difficult emotions and setbacks, but also just focusing on what you're trying to achieve that day and ignoring stuff that might crop up, might feel important, but actually might not be as important as you think it is in the moment. So being aware of that, journaling can really help with that as well. But like I said, we'll cover it a lot more in the next episode. Next up, we have actually getting feedback from other people. Like I said, this is why I have coaches, people have coaches. Having a second set of eyes and things can be really useful. It's really hard when you're in it to actually get a better perspective, and having someone that you trust, either friends or professionals, for honest and frank feedback, but in a position where you feel safe to be open and honest with them and they can be open and honest with you, allows you to actually put a practical plan in place moving forward without being so caught up in the emotional and selfish side of it, or actually can allow you a space to feel really supported and be really honest as well. So actually getting feedback from either friends that you trust or professionals can be a good way about this as well. Last but not least is celebrating the small wins. So often one thing, especially in British society, is that we don't usually shout about our successes. We usually are quite modest, self-deprecating, and actually recognizing and celebrating your progress, giving yourself or aligning sort of certain milestones with rewards that you're going to line up, no matter how small. Even having a effort sort of chart, days that you've tried X amount or whatever. There's different ways to do it, but recognizing even the smallest bits of progress, recognizing that if we're talking about people overeating, for example, or mindless eating, and usually that sort of goes into a big overeating binge episode, actually just having the first level and going, I caught myself and I realized I did it, but I still carried on with it. That's still a step forward. That's massive. So having that awareness is the first step. Like we said, having that honesty and actually putting your hand up, going, actually that event happened, can be the first step in recognizing that there's an issue that needs to be addressed potentially. Reaching out for help, massive step. Even when I've sat down with patients and they've had certain issues and we've discussed about behaviors, but they're really hesitant towards it, we might say, right, so the plan this week isn't to reach out and talk to this service, for example. It might be, let's read about it this week. Let's do some reading, set some time aside, set 5 minutes aside and just spend 5 minutes reading about it. And then you might think, well, what's that going to do about it? It's actually a small step towards making the step to take action. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to move a bit closer each day to where we want to be. So thinking about what you're trying to achieve and breaking it down into really, really small steps, even to the first smallest step. It might just be looking it up online. It might even be reading about it. That's something to be celebrated. And then that also gives you big motivation, encouragement, and allows you to take the next step and the next step. And then before you know it, we've built that momentum that we're looking for. So celebrating small wins can be a really big way to develop that honesty, because it helps you track your progress. It can give you a huge amount of motivation and enjoyment in the process, but also helps build that momentum as well.
So there you have it. Thank you very much for listening to today's episode of the Balanced Approach podcast. If you have any questions, queries, or would like to reach out to me, please do. I am at Louis Padian Nutrition, which is at LOUISPADIAN Nutrition on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and all other social media platforms. If you're looking for support in achieving your goals and living a healthier, happier, and more balanced life in the process, click the link below and inquire about working with me. Remember to subscribe to the Balanced Approach podcast wherever you're listening for more insightful episodes, and I look forward to speaking to you soon.